This is Chip Maxwell, and you're listening to the Retire Smart podcast with David Brooks. In this episode, we welcome back our resident authority on digital currency, Brad Starken, to decipher some major shifts in the world of crypto. From executive orders and strategic reserves to quantum computing and energy demands, Brad brings clarity to a rapidly evolving space and shares what it all could mean for the future of crypto and regulation.
Once again, joining me in the studio is our resident authority on all things digital assets, cryptocurrency, and the like. And we've got a class coming up. Brad Starken, how we doing, brother?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me. Yes, we have the class coming in next week, Wednesday, April 9th at 6:30 p.m. Hopefully the weather is going to be good because we had to postpone the last one.
Yeah, and we had, I think, over 60 registrants. And I believe the majority of them have signed up for the new one. So it might be a standing room only class again, but it is a popular topic. So let's talk about, just since the last time you were on, a lot of changes. So current President Trump signed an executive order to create basically a reserve of crypto assets and a stockpile. Can you talk about those two things and kind of maybe what the difference is there? Or?
Yeah, certainly. So it's going to be the Bitcoin Strategic Reserve. So basically all the Bitcoin that's either we've been forfeited as part of like criminal activity or civil asset forfeiture proceedings that basically our government has, garnered through the course of time. And essentially what this executive order was stating is we are not going to sell that Bitcoin. We're just going to let that grow in the background, kind of almost as that digital gold, if you will.
And from what I understand, we collected, and I don't know if it's millions or billions, $380 million worth. I think it was millions, and forgive me if I don't know this, but I know it was 17 billion. It was almost a 15x on what it would be worth if we had not, as the government just sold. They just confiscated it and then basically liquidated it, right?
Yeah, that's been, over the past years of our government's been selling the Bitcoin, and basically, President Trump is going to put a stop on that. So anything that they will, get through various reasons, they're not going to actually go out and buy it to put it in here, but this is basically just stockpiling it for the strategic, or that's going to be the strategic reserve. And very similarly, that's what also the stockpile is going to be, but that's going to be other digital assets.
Yeah, so the reserve is literally going to be Bitcoin, which is basically a form of store of value, right? A digital store of value. The stockpile is going to involve other cryptocurrencies or digital assets. You and I talk about the different various kinds that are going to be much more readily available to use in smart contracts and actual business transactions, right?
Yep.
Accounting, et cetera. So, and I think it was Solana, Ethereum, and Bitcoin were the big three at the beginning, and there'll be additional ones coming in there, stable coins, I imagine.
Certainly. I think XRP is going to be one of those as well. More to come on this. Certainly it's just in its infancy right now, but very similarly for that strategic reserve, it's just other, cryptocurrencies that our government has gotten hold of that they're basically not going to sell during that time frame as well.
So that inherently would tell me that the value of these assets, this is, I don't want to say it puts a floor, but it almost puts a floor under the price of some of these assets, because if the government's going to hold them, there's less float, right? Like we call stock. There's less Bitcoin available. And again, we already think about 10% is gone forever of the 21 million that there can be, right? And so if the government starts to acquire and hold them, that absolutely means their inherent value, their intrinsic value is going to increase over time. So I think that bodes well for the future of it, at least as an asset price. Again, I know there's folks that follow like Charlie Munger and Warren Buffett's of the world. We don't understand it. We don't own it. But this is something people need to at least get their head around. It's here to stay.
Yes, very interesting space. And as we were just discussing earlier, certainly the regulation around it is something that's going to be very big and hopefully coming this year.
Okay. So, and Ethereum is, again, one I've talked about in the past that I kind of like because of the use in the smart contracts. You kind of go through that in the class that are coming up. You actually talk about how blockchain sort of works. I mean, not too deep, but the basis of it, right? So I think that bodes well. We also have legislation in committee in the Senate and in the House that will validate owning these, right? Because one of the things in the previous administration and in the previous SECs, is it a currency? Is it a security? And XRP just won their lawsuit, right?
Yes, they did.
So it is, and so stable coins are not going to be securities. They're going to be basically used for transactions. It's just like using a Venmo or a Zelle or some other form of digital payment system. So that's going to put the validity of those stable coins pretty high up there, right?
Yeah, certainly. And, as we were kind of joking around this morning, I'm dealing with that with my CPA right now of trying to, some of the things that I sold last year from a tax perspective of some of the cost basis didn't carry forward. So now I'm hunting that out in the background. So yes, more regulation would certainly be welcomed in this industry to make it just more transparent.
Well, that's what industry wants in general. We just want to know, what are the rules of the game that we're playing by, right? And can we have some stability with those rules, not changing things around? And that's kind of the riff of what's going on in the equity markets right now with tariffs and how long are they going to be here? Are they real? They stick in all this information. But now I think it's interesting too, in the time we got left, and you'll probably talk about this in the class even. Obviously, this administration is much more pro-crypto. We saw a huge bump in the price of crypto assets after the election in November. They've since sold off, as a lot of other risk assets have, the first quarter of this year. But you just saw, we just saw the Trump's two boys, Eric and Don Jr., I think, right? That. Yep. And took a pretty big stake in a company that is a mining company that's going to be mining here in the U.S. Is that right?
That's correct. So that's actually going to be Hut 8 is the name of the company, and they're going to be 20% stakeholders in this company. So 80% still will be remaining owned by Hut 8. But long and short, they have 61,000 mining machines in this entity that they're going to be able to help. And I believe some of that is going to be helping on the strategic reserve, but more to come on that.
Yeah, that'll be interesting to follow. And I just think there's so many fascinating stories that come out of this. The energy consumption required for such an operation, 61,000 mining machines. I don't know what the energy level is needed for that, but it could probably run the city of Omaha, right?
Probably.
Or even maybe bigger. I don't know exactly. But energy consumption is going to go up. So that's, again, getting back to this administration's, they're trying to drive down the price of energy right now, the cost of oil, et cetera, for production of kilowatts, et cetera, because quantum computing, AI, Bitcoin mining, crypto, this is only going to put more pressure on the the grid, as we call it. But how do you protect the grid? Well, blockchain technology can actually be used to encrypt and protect these things from hackers. Tell me a little bit about what are the current fears out there now that we have quantum computing has become a real thing. It's in its infancy, but the breakthroughs are there. That was one of the things that spooked people about cryptocurrencies, maybe 2 months ago when this was announced, that what if they could actually crack the algorithms, the security of these digital assets?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And I discussed this a little in the last class that I went through on the quantum computing. And ultimately, right now, the problems that the quantum computing can solve are very, very structured and basically in the same direction. So I want to say it was like right around 1,000 was the number that it can get to today. And it's going to need several million to crack Bitcoin's coding, if you will. With that said, I would argue that, if you can crack Bitcoin's coding, you can crack just about anything on the planet. So
it also tells me that they would be able to create new encryption. So there may be a future version of a Bitcoin created.
No question.
From quantum computing. Again, there's so much to unpack here. So, All right. Look, we're running out of time for this week, but I think this is fascinating stuff. Whether you're investing in crypto or you just want to understand it because it will be part of our future, this is a great class to attend. So it's going to be, again, at the Midwest Learning Center. That's coming up this Wednesday, April 9th at 6:30 p.m. right here at the Midwest Learning Center. So give us a call, 402-369-7777, or go on the events page, retiresmartnow.com, find the events page, and register. You do need to register. Thank you, Brad, for coming in.
Thank you, David.
Thank you for listening to the Retire Smart podcast with David Brooks. If you want to learn how to generate lifetime income, reduce your tax bill, and maintain your lifestyle in retirement, visit retiresmartpodcast.com. And make sure to subscribe to keep up with new episodes every week.